It is another episode of the States Up podcast. I'm your host, Brant Freeman. And again, as always, we try to tell the stories of the student athletes here at Texas State. We have visited with a variety of athletes covering a number of sports over the years. Certainly right now, a lot of baseball and softball guests as those two sports are in season. We had a lot of basketball guests on as well with men's and women's programs here at Texas State. Wrapping things up recently, we've talked tennis and golf. We've also talked track and field. And the subject of our podcast today is with the track and field program. It is Kerrington Johnson. She's new to the program this year. Previously at Wofford, a really stand-up performer with the Terriers, and has made her way from South Carolina to Texas to compete at Texas State. And she joins us now on the States Up podcast. Kerrington, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here, Kerrington. And before we kind of get into the questions here, I first want to go over your background. What you accomplished at Wofford. You spent 4 years competing in the SoCon with the Terriers. You were the 2021 Southern Conference Freshman of the Year in outdoor hurdles. You were the 2023 Most Outstanding Track Performer this past year. Along the way, three-time conference champion in the 60-meter, 100-meter, and 400-meter hurdles as well. So well accomplished, in South Carolina, which is where you're from, Anderson, South Carolina as well. So let's start there. For you growing up in South Carolina, your dad was a great track athlete at Clemson, which is also in South Carolina. How much of a change was it for you to go from the Palmetto State here to the Lone Star State?
The transition was definitely tough. I've grown up my whole life in South Carolina. I remember my very first practice here with Texas. It was like the middle of August. I think it was 104 degrees. So immediately the heat, I was like, oh my goodness, what did I sign myself up for? But I definitely wanted to come to that next level, which is why I picked Texas State. And it's been great so far. Preseason is definitely the toughest battle, but it set me up really well for indoor and outdoor, I feel like. So I'm excited to see where the rest of our season goes.
Yeah, looking at what you've accomplished so far, top three finishes, in the hurdles. At the Charles Austin Classic recently, you earned first place in the 400-meter and second place in the 100-meter. And there's a huge competition coming up this weekend as well, the Bobcat Invitational, which goes kind of hand in hand with one of the largest track and field events in the country, the Texas Relays up the road in Austin. What are you looking forward to in that competition, your introduction to it this weekend?
So this past weekend in the 100 hurdles and 400 hurdles, those were actually my best season openers ever, all throughout my freshman year at Wofford up until now. So I'm definitely looking to build on that. We have critiques from both of my races, so trying to correct the little things because hurdles are all about the little micro movements. So looking to build on that and obviously drop my times this weekend.
How's the coaching staff been for you so far at Texas State? Because again, you're working, with the same staff for a number of years at Wofford. You're introduced to a new staff here. How has that transition been?
So I visited in April of 23. My visit was mainly with Coach E because he is with sprints and hurdles, but I got to meet the whole staff. So working personally with Coach E has been great. In the preseason, he really works with all of our schedules. So I'm in grad school and I actually had class during some of the practices, so I would go early in the mornings. And that individual time really helped. And so now that we're in outdoor, I already have the corrections that I need to work on. Coaching's been great. We have a lot of personalized attention that I really like.
So you mentioned getting adjusted to the heat here in Texas compared to South Carolina. That's one of the you think about pros and cons list. In the summer, okay, it's a con. But what have the pros been for you moving to Texas? How much have you enjoyed the city of San Marcos, the culture here in Texas? How different has that been in a good way for you?
In a good way, I'm a nature lover for sure. I don't really like big cities. I think being a little bit away from Austin, Houston, Dallas, the big cities, kind of it's a small town to me, San Marcos. And it kind of reminds me of my hometown. When I first moved down, I loved going to the farmers markets on Saturday mornings. I love sitting by the river, just anything outside, reading a book by the river. And I think it's definitely good to have that balance outside of track. That's one thing I learned in undergrad was that my life can't be track 7 days a week. So especially like getting outside of the training environment and just seeing what all the city has to offer, I've really enjoyed that.
So your upbringing in South Carolina, your dad was a competitor at Clemson. Was he also in the hurdles?
He did sprints and relays, so like the 100, 200, 4x1, and I believe the open 400 sometimes as well.
How influential has he been in your career?
He's probably one of my number one fans, him and my mom both. He was actually at the meet. Both my parents came down for the meet this past weekend. He doesn't try to be too much of a coach, which I appreciate, because I know he has that knowledge. He was a college athlete himself, but he more so takes on the supportive role, which I appreciate, letting my coaches be the coach. And he's there for like the emotional support.
Track and field is not a sport a lot of people just kind of, casually pick up and try their hand at, right? It's easy to go to the park and go shoot hoops, go find a baseball field and, play baseball or softball. Track and field, is a more niche sport. You really got to want to do it. So what inspired you to get into it? Why did you choose this to be your sport of choice?
I think I actually did kind of stumble upon it. So both of my parents ran track, and I think deep down they always really wanted me to, but I grew up dancing and cheering. That was like my first passion. So from like 4 years old all the way to about 10th grade, I was dancing and cheering. And I actually went out to the track team one year in 8th grade, but I was so overwhelmed by like all the people. High school track was a ton of kids coming out, and I was like, I don't like it. It's too many people. But I went back 10th grade. I stuck with it. My big sister actually went with me. That's the reason I stuck with it. So that's another big inspiration in my life. And from there, I fell in love with it pretty quickly. And hurdles, we were just trying me out in a bunch of different events, seeing what I could do. And I think my background in dance allowed me to have some like coordination and flexibility to really tackle the hurdles.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Sprints or distance running. You make a choice there. You could also maybe try out for field events, but the hurdles, a very difficult, event to kind of, pick up and go and be really successful at. For you, why did you end up, pursuing that? And how do you go about preparing, every time you go out there and compete?
I think at first I liked the challenge. It's something that all my teammates weren't doing, so I liked having the separate practices, getting to go with the hurdles. And it's funny because I've been doing it since 10th grade, so this is about year 8. I still have a fear of the hurdles. So Coach E's been working with me on like trying to get to the bottom of maybe why. So I've been doing it so long, like maybe it's should be easier by now, I guess, but there's definitely still a fear there, especially to the first hurdle. It's like you look up and see it. It's like, oh. So I'm really just trying to get some more aggression. What was the second part of the question? What was the second part of the question? I was listening to the first.
Just what kind of inspired you, to get into hurdles in the first place?
I like the challenge for sure. 100 hurdles are my favorite just because it's the rhythm. I was also a tap dancer, so that quick feet, everything in between. I think it just reminds me a lot of, that connection to dance. But I love the challenge.
So I was going to ask you between 60, 100, and 400, obviously the difference being the distance, but what are the different challenges with each of those events?
So I've always seen indoor as a setup for outdoor. So 60-meter hurdles, there's 5 hurdles. That's half of the race for outdoor. And in outdoor, the first half is always my weakest spot of the race. So I see indoor as preparation, really getting those first 5 hurdles strong, so that when I transition to outdoor, I have that good setup that can just carry it over for the last 5 hurdles. 400 hurdles, that's a whole different area of strength and grit, I feel like. It's still 10 hurdles, but all the way around. So just that last backstretch, the final backstretch, using all your strength, and then finding your rhythm early on in the race is really what I've been trying to work on.
Track and field rosters are large, between sprinters, distance runners, again, and those who compete, in the field events, between men and women. Again, there's a large roster here at Texas State. Who have you gotten closest to since you arrived from South Carolina last year?
I think immediately Daniel, he's our male hurdler. He took me under his wing, and we're both in grad school, so we're kind of the same age, thinking the same way about like life after sports, things like that. Daniel Harold's been a great mentor. The first people I met on my visit were Tahir, Kelly, and Brian West. They were there taking my pictures, so that was like, again, one of my first connections with the team, made me feel welcome.
You mentioned, you're a graduate transfer. You got your degree already at Wofford in finance. Mm-hmm. So what is it that you're pursuing? One, what is your master's degree that you're working on here, and what do you want to pursue once you're done competing?
So I'm studying student affairs in higher education, which that encompasses all the functional areas of higher ed, student involvement, fraternity, and sorority life. But my focus is going to be in student athlete development. So during my time as an undergrad, I realized how big of an impact my athletic identity was having on my journey and how I needed to tap into other areas of my life. So I really want to help other student athletes on their journeys, whether it be academically, mentally, career development, money management, just all the little things. We spend so much time focused on our sport, but there really is life after sports, life during track that you have to find a balance between both.
You found a way to do that, between already getting your degree on the fast track, no pun intended there, by the way, being a student athlete, and also marketing yourself with your YouTube channel that you started when you were back in high school before you became a college student athlete, and you've now gained a following of more than 5,000. You have more than 500,000 views so far on your YouTube channel. So tell me more about that.
So I think it was always like a dream deep down to start a YouTube channel. I started it out as workout videos, and thankfully during COVID, when everyone was big into at-home workouts, I had that platform, and that's when my viewership and subscribers really skyrocketed. So I was doing at-home, equipment-free workouts, really suitable to all levels. And at first it was just basic things, like core workouts, arm workouts, leg workouts. So I was like, I want to make this more enjoyable, more fun. We're all stuck at home. So I started doing dance cardio, to really popular songs, and I enjoyed that. My viewers enjoyed that. And I took a break once I went back to school, once universities opened back up after COVID. But it was my mom who was like, you should really start YouTube back again. I really enjoyed watching the videos. So I started vlogging at Wofford. And my friends loved it. We loved watching the memories back, the track meets back. I took another break. And so then when I got here in the fall, Coach E was really big on take pictures at practice, record practices, do TikTok, YouTube, all these things. And so I think having the coach in my ear, someone motivating me to get back into YouTube. That's why I started picking it back up again this year. And it's been fun to document my 5th year.
You understand, too, that, part of your YouTube series includes meal prep as well?
Yes. I'm vegetarian it'll be 2 years in April. And so that's something, I was the first in my family to do that. So really sharing how I eat, and you have to be fueled to get through these workouts. And so I like sharing my recipes, my grocery hauls, everything.
So what was the reason for you to become a vegetarian, if you don't mind my asking?
Yes, I don't know why or how I stumbled across this documentary. I think it was called Game Changers. I watched that my sophomore year of college, and within a year I had cut out all meat products. That's the documentary that did it for me, just seeing, I guess, the production of everything, the impact on environment, animals, and all that. And I felt a lot better immediately, but now that it's been 2 years, I kind of feel the same as I've been feeling. But within a month of switching, energy levels were better. I was holding on better at workouts, so I've stuck with it for 2 years.
Typically for athletes, the diet consists of a lot of protein. So as a vegetarian, how do you go about getting yours?
I love doing smoothies after practice, just a lot of fresh and frozen fruit, and I'll mix in nuts because those obviously have a lot of protein. I met with a nutritionist when I first switched just to make sure I was on the right track. I'm not a licensed dietitian or nutritionist, so to make sure I was on the right track with that. I do a lot of seeds. It's really inspired me to eat, try new foods. Because growing up, I wouldn't say I was a picky eater, but I didn't like to try new things. So now, new fruits and vegetables, I'm always trying really a lot of nuts and seeds and beans.
I'm curious, by the way, you mentioned, some of the at-home workouts, during the pandemic, and everybody had their way of trying to just keep their sanity during that time, right? And working out was a great way to do that. What were some of the ways you were trying to get others to do at-home workouts? What were the methods that you were trying to teach others?
I like to just be relatable. So I would talk a lot in the beginning of the videos and the because some people like different things. Some people like videos that just get straight to the workout. But I like to have a little motivational part in the beginning, show some bloopers in the end, just be relatable, had a sense of humor because it was a challenging time for myself. So it's also a way for me to just be in front of the camera and share my personality.
Do you plan on keeping the YouTube, channel and all the social media stuff going even after you're done competing?
I do want to because I want to share my transition out of sports. It's been such a big part of my identity for 8 years. So it's going to be a big life change. So I want to show how I go about navigating that process.
Well, that is great stuff. Kerrington, it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit more. Great story. Again, growing up in South Carolina, making a journey to Texas, very successful time for you at Wofford. You've done some good things here at Texas State. You got a big meet coming up this weekend. Before we know it, the Sun Belt Outdoor Championships will be here in about 6 weeks or so. So wish you the best of luck for the remainder of the year. And thank you again for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. Well, that again, Kerrington Johnson, our guest. Again, a star hurdler for Texas State track and fields. And that's going to wrap up the States Up podcast. For Kerrington, I'm Brain Freeman, as always, reminding you to keep your States Up. And we'll see you next time.